The battle of metros, Tampa Bay, Florida versus Sarasota. If you've been wondering which of these might be best for you and your family, well, wonder no longer, my friend, because today we're attacking that specific question. Living, working, playing, and everything in between, this relatively confusing and convoluted search. My name is Adam Hancock. You have found yourself at the Florida Relocation Guide, your smartest way to buy, sell, and/or invest in the entire state of Florida. And without further ado, let's hop in. Okay, the first major juxtaposition I want to tackle is the idea of living in these cities versus each other. And let's start with Sarasota because I think it's the right order to go in. It's a little easier to get your head around, and Tampa makes a lot more sense, in my opinion, in contrast to SRQ. So the first thing about Sarasota that you're going to find out, and you can take both counties, all the cities within them, is that it feels a lot smaller. When you get there, it is smaller. And one of the big things it has going for it is it has two of the largest, most in vogue master plan suburbs in the United States within that relatively small area. So if we put a general ceiling, just for example's sake on this video, that my guess is most people watching this kind of topic on YouTube specifically are going to be potentially relocating, mostly out of state, maybe in Florida, different city to this, but relocation nonetheless, which is very important because your search is going to be very different than if you're a local. Well, when people come to Sarasota, what they typically do is we'll start with the house in the neighborhood, and that's how they'll learn geography, everything else. So because you have these anchors of these really new areas with a ton of new construction neighborhoods, they look like they do online. There's a huge internet infrastructure because of new construction, not resale. So it's not just Zillow where it's interesting, but you're like, I don't know where these houses are. It's concepts. Downtown's the whole thing. And when you get to town, a lot of them look exactly like they do online, so it betters the experience. So it's just easier. So you say, okay, Lakewood Ranch is northeast of town and Venice is south. And so you learn a little bit about that versus each other. Why would you be in this part of town versus this? Different builders, and you learn all that just by exploring the suburbs. And then it's just everything else. Why would I not choose those? Well, maybe I want to be more central. So there's in between actual Sarasota city limits. I want to go a little faster. There's all the resales. I don't like new construction homes. I want to be closer to the beach or the coast or something like that. But it really does anchor off of these two, and that's a material difference. And then everyone goes from those two, and the reason that those are popular in the first place is that they're really offshoots of being close to the main thoroughfare, which in Sarasota is really one. It's downtown Sarasota, Siesta Key, Lido Beach, St. Armand Circle. It bleeds into Longboat Key and Anna Maria Island. You have Venice Beach, right? But it does feel like it's all kind of one and the same. It feels like everybody was here where John Ringling went, and then they started bleeding to the outskirts. And the whole rest of the town's like that. So you want to save a little bit of money versus Lakewood Ranch? Well, you can just go a little further and get junior versions. Parish, Palmetto. Same with Venice. You want to say, it doesn't quite work. I want to be a little closer. Well, you have Palmer Ranch, which is slightly closer than Venice. You could go further and go in Englewood. You could go to Northport, which is east. But again, once you learn the two, bleeds. Tampa, rather different in that one. I think one of the biggest things is it doesn't start at the house. If you started at an individual house or neighborhood in Tampa, it's not enough information yet. So Tampa Bay, I think what you got to do is you got to take one step back and you got to say, well, how the hell do I even get my head around this place at first, right? And just loosely, right? Because you're not ready to do that in totality yet. You have Hillsborough County and Pinellas and Pasco. So Sarasota very much feels like you go east of the beaches, but you're still just east of the beaches. Hillsborough County versus Pinellas County, it's two different cities. One has beaches, one doesn't. That's the way it feels. And then when you go just north, you're like, all right, I'm just all of a sudden in this county called Pasco, but that's all the way to the beach and not. So it's east to west, right? Or all the way to the coast rather. So you're like, all right, loosely get my head around like just general context of what does all this mean? And then one of the big differences here is I think in Tampa's search is you start with, do I need to be close to something? Because that's going to matter a lot here, logistically. So do I need to be close to a workplace? And then find my house. Do I need to be close to family? A school, whether that's my kid's college or that's some sort of grade school or something like that. And then you say, what can I do from here? Because you might be in a box where that's going to matter more than you falling in love with some neighborhood. So I think that's the order. Then after that, those two steps, then I think you look at style. You say, do I need a suburban kind of house or do I want a suburban kind of house? Like, a sprawling single family or a two-story that has the bedrooms and the bathrooms and maybe is newer, maybe it's in a gated neighborhood. Do I want that? Or do I want some sort of, kind of real city vibe, some sort of bungalow and front porch living and maybe some walkability? Do I want to be near cool stuff? And how much does that matter versus how close I want to be to something? Like, do I want a suburb house, but I don't if it gets 30 minutes away versus 20? So how much does that matter in my weighted search? And that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a weighted formula we're building here. So general idea of what the area is like. Do I need to be close to something? Style of living. And then from there, what I would do, then I would juxtapose the options within it. So there's many, many suburbs, for instance, right? So I'm not going to get crazy on this video because I have talked about this a lot. The very first video on this channel, the near Tampa video, it's a little wordy, but that hits in. I can reference other videos that talk about suburbs specifically. But if you just want suburbs, because Tampa's so big, it's good. This is a good thing, is you can go many directions. You can say, I want the newest, sexiest, the Lakewood Ranch to Sarasota of Tampa. And I go north to Wesley Chapel, Lando Lakes, Lutz, Zephyr Hills. Going north is going to be the best chance to get like a master plan feel like it does online. But it is a little sacrifice in location. Well, a lot of the military folks, because they don't want to sacrifice that huge location, is they'll go east. They'll go to Brandon and Riverview and Progress Village, somewhere over there, right? Still suburban housing, not as mature, it's just different. Well, then you could say, what if I want to be in between? Well, I could go west. I could go towards Clearwater Beach, but not be in the beach coast yet, or the beach county. And I could go to West Chase, Town and Country, Carrollwood, Northdale, and that gets you at a certain part of that city might give you equal distance to downtown Tampa and the beaches, right? But you could still get a relatively semblance of a suburban family neighborhood. It's the same with the other style of neighborhoods. If I want that like downtown kind of vibe or that city living, you have historic Hyde Park, which is like the most mature, bougiest version of that. It's really well done. It's beautiful, but it comes at a premium. Palmacia West is the same way. Beach Park, a little bit in between. That's South Tampa. So what are other options do I have in that kind of eclectic bungalow housing world? Maybe I want to save a little bit of money or just, I can't be in that main one. I couldn't get into it. Riverside Heights, just 4 miles above it. That's another one to explore. Even a junior version of that, Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights. And then you have all of St. Petersburg, which is basically almost 100% bungalow living. And you could go, where do I live there? Well, I have Old Northeast and Woodland. You see what I'm getting at here, right? Again, I can't get into it all in this video, but that's the order I would go in, is like really none of that might be relevant until you've worked through the other things. And then on top of all of that, that's where the criteria starts to matter a lot more. And it really is what I would try to do is I would really try to go in that order because your criteria is going to be house size. If we've already covered logistics, it's going to be house size. It's going to be price point for sure. And then what do I like newness and floor plan, all of that is going to really, really matter. Yard size, that whole thing, it's going to matter. But I do think you can almost look for the perfect scenario of if my criteria worked and I worked through the other things first. And if it doesn't, then you say, okay, what's the next version? And in this capacity, if you could do this, even if you got a real estate agent that most real estate agents are not educated on this vast territory. They live in St. Pete. They don't even go to Wesley Chapel, right? That's just the way a local lives. And that's why we really have honed in on the relocation because you learn things different. You need a much more macro approach. It's very hard to be narrow, to have enough examples to educate someone that calls and says, I'm looking from Sarasota to Naples, or Tampa Bay or whatever. So that's nor here nor there. But if you could work your way through this, then you could ask the right questions, even if the person wasn't educated in a way to be able to assist you in that manner, because kind of covering those bases first. So that's, I would say, the living part is, and let's hop to number 2. All right, now let's cover working. We've talked living, we're gonna talk now jobs, economics, and the like. So if we have a divide on this list amongst anything, this is probably our biggest gap. Tampa Bay versus Sarasota is a massive contrast. And let's start with Sarasota first. Still think it makes the most sense in order. Sarasota's metro is very much a play first, work second area, in my opinion. It's the most advantageous in that lane. I would say the same for Naples. If you are at the end of your primary work career, if you're financially independent, you're in an industry that's work from home is a thing now, and you think that's going to stay the case, then it is a really, really nice place to live, especially because the benefit of a town like this versus a working kind of town is the whole structure, the whole infrastructure is different. A downtown that's based on a city that you would go to for a job a lot of times, it's built in a certain way to support that. You need a lot of buildings to go high to get a lot of workers and a lot of businesses and make it attractive like that. You need places to eat so people can just walk to work because you don't have a huge break. You might have living options within that too, so that you kind of have a 15-minute city where you can live, work, and play, where you don't always have to commute out. But it's very much based on people hustling in, and a lot of times hustling out if they don't live there. Well, if your town is not based on that, then the downtown's not even built in to support that need. So like a downtown Sarasota, you have, if you don't need all that, right, you have art galleries and a lot of hospitality, a lot of things to support people's lifestyle. And then if you don't need all that work built in there, then you have a lot of condominiums that replace that, or just more commercial viability when it comes to just pure fun lifestyle stuff. And that is Sarasota, right? But you also don't have all those work commutes the same way. You don't have all those traffic patterns. And that's what our Sarasota and Naples are. If you work there, it's not because mostly you are targeting it. Tampa, completely different. Now, the big thing here is this where Tampa really starts to rise to the top when it comes to even a Florida conversation. If you're moving to Southwest Florida, and you chose like, I want to be on that Gulf Coast and everything like that, not doing the Panhandle, and I don't want to be inland, then it's really Tampa Bay versus Sarasota versus Naples, Fort Myers. Well, if you're coming for this reason in the working category, it's a binary conversation. Just Tampa. That's your option, right? The other ones are not going to really compete in that lane. Your competition leaves Southwest Florida completely. Tampa versus Orlando versus Miami versus Jacksonville. That's the juxtaposition. But if you chose Southwest Florida and you want all that has to offer, this is the one. And then I think it excels uniquely in a couple facets, but I found an article that is really, really interesting. So I'm going to rattle some of that off. But big company stuff, particular industries, and entrepreneurial startup land. So listen to this stuff. And this is all 2022 to now. Tampa ranks number 4 best large city to start a business. Florida ranks number 1 as a state in the best state business environment. Tampa ranks number 4 best place in the entire country to work remotely. Tampa has the 6th most minority business owners in the entire United States. Tampa is among the top 10 fastest growing U.S. tech hubs for IT talent. Hillsborough County ranks 4th amongst U.S. counties in totality in employment growth. Currently, there's 50,000 jobs open in high-skill, high-wage fields that have not been filled. And of course, you have the no state income tax, so you take home more money than most. Same with Texas. But it's interesting for a couple facets. One of the things I like the best is Tampa still doesn't feel massive. Miami feels very large to me, and so does Jacksonville. And a lot of times you get like a huge mini Manhattan city like Miami. You're going to have opportunity because of that, because it is attractive for commercial viability of people coming in and doing cool things and building cool things. Well, Tampa's just big enough to get all of that stuff, but it still doesn't feel like mania. And I think that's a big, big, big difference. Also, one of the biggest things I think it's excelled on individually in the last couple of years is the startup entrepreneurial kind of incubation land where it was really, really lacking. If you were like coming from California or Seattle or Nevada or New York, New Jersey, or something like that, where a lot of these cities had startup businesses in much more vast way. You would come to Florida and you'd have maybe Miami, but Miami's not for everyone. It's a unique place. So a lot of those people ended up going to Texas because you had a lot of the same financial economic thing going for you with the no state income tax, and a lot of the trying to make it advantageous for businesses to come in. And that's where Austin, Texas just went. Phew. Well, Tampa has really made a strong play. There's several incubators now. You have Jeffrey Vinnick and Bill Gates developing the Channelside District. You have a lot of mixed use spaces. You have the Water Street area that I just talked about on my last video that is really embracing that concept of, can you live in an urban environment and not just be smog and traffic? Can you live in there in a healthy way? Can you live, work, and play there and not have to shoot out to the suburbs all the time? Can you make it, all that kind of stuff. So you kind of get the point here, but that's how I would look at working in Tampa versus Sarasota. And I think it's a pretty simple conversation. Okay, and our third and final one, just to kind of tie a bow in this video, we're going to talk vibe, lifestyle, and just general things to do. And this time around, we're starting with Tampa. So what I would say about Tampa Bay is I consider it almost like an all-in-one city. If you go around Florida and you like a lot of things about different parts, 38 district in Pensacola, you would take a little bit of that. And then you like Boca Raton, take a little bit of that. Vero Beach, Sarasota, Venice, Ocala, Jacksonville. You take all this little thing and you're kind of making this stew. I think Tampa Bay pretty much in some way or another has a way to satiate all of those needs differently, but a way to satiate all of those needs individually without leaving the metro. So you can kind of reinvent and live all these different lifestyles without leaving the metro. And I can't say the same for a lot of other places that will lack one or the other. So I think that's a big key. And if I just kind of go through some general stuff to drive this point home. So say you have kids, right? Well, one, you have enough like major commercial amenities like theme parks, Busch Gardens, you have Adventure Island, you have your own zoo, your own aquarium. And one of the best things about that, though, is if you have kids, for me, it was, you don't have like, you're 21, you can go to brunch for 7 hours if you want to, right? Just get lost in the day. With kids, you don't just have unlimited time between work and nap schedules and all that. You're finding snippets of time. So it's not just things to do, it's things to do that orient to specific lifestyles. And Tampa, I think, especially excels in that area. I've mentioned that city pass idea. My wife used to go to the zoo, I think it's called Zoo Tampa now, it was Lowry Park, but you go to the zoo for an hour in the morning and then go to Chick-fil-A and be home for a nap. It's the path of least resistance. And that's not to mention the public parks and the splash pads. It's pleasant feeling, it feels spread out, and it does not feel that clunky. I think that's a big key. Say you want a bougie walking district, you want to shoot down to a district, mixed use space, Hyde Park Village, 6 blocks, surrounds the historic neighborhoods. And this is like, for context, you got your West Elms, your Pottery Barns, your upscale steakhouses, you got all of that kind of thing. It's wide open, it feels new and clean and upscale, and you have your juicing places and Soul Cycles and coffee shops. You can have that vibe. Well, what if you want to contrast to that and you're looking for something different and eclectic? You could go to Ybor City, founded on the back of the cigar industry, and it's kind of like a mini New Orleans of sorts. They've kept a lot of the buildings intact. It's brick, historic, like a train trolley that runs through there. Tampa Bay Brewing Company, improv theater, you have clubs, and it's the opposite of Hyde Park. Well, what if you want to get out and shop for the day? You have a lovely International Plaza. So International Mall, very, very upscale, sits in front of it or behind a district called Bay Street, which has a bunch of restaurants and the like. So you got that whole thing, right? That's just one of the malls. Well, what if I want to go completely laid back? St. Petersburg downtown is a great option for that. So go over to Pinellas County on the Bay side. Downtown St. Pete is much more of a hospitality play first area than downtown Tampa is, which is much more work culture. So it's big and you have all these different ways to do it. You have a really, really, really upscale place that faces the water called Beach Street or Beach Drive. You have rocker bar districts. You have brewery scene. Every kind of food you could imagine. You could walk out to the water. There's a pier, and that's just a whole different thing. So you kind of get when I'm driving home here, right? And that's not to mention the beaches or the suburbs or any of that kind of thing. Well, even the way I shouted them out, I think one of the most interesting things about Tampa Bay is how they separate them in districts. So you Google things to do in Tampa, go to Yelp, and it just lists a bunch of stuff individually, right? Great. Well, the way that Tampa separates them is very much in areas. So most people will go to like an area and experience that for the day. And that's kind of the districts I mentioned, right? You could go eat, shop, hang out in an area, and it's just a lot easier to get your head around. And it really just, depending on what you're feeling that day, it's not a bunch of one-offs. It really is concise and separate in town. And I think it's a great way to navigate. And it's a lot easier to pick where you want to live and everything if you're attracted to one of these areas versus each other. They're all very, very different. So if we're just being completely fair, the other thing I'd mention is, all of this is going to come with a traffic hit for sure, definitely versus Sarasota. The more in vogue this stays, the more that Tampa Bay's, they're going to need to figure out that infrastructure. The one thing I'd say about traffic is, if you want all of the things I mentioned, that comes with the territory because of the pure amount of people and all that kind of stuff. But I think Tampa Bay's traffic is about perspective. Where are you coming from if you're coming to Tampa? And a lot of the people that come from the major net migration areas to Tampa, like our biggest net migrations are a lot of times New York and New Jersey, and these are Illinois. Then if you're from a bigger area in perspective, then a lot of the Tampa traffic doesn't feel crazy. Because like I said, this is not the size of a Miami or Jacksonville. It doesn't feel like that all the time. And if you wanted to stay away from it, you could shoot to the suburbs. You could hop over to the Pinellas County and save yourself a little bit there. But again, it exists. It's real. 15 miles does not take 15 minutes. And then the last thing before I move to Sarasota is it also really excels in large entertainment venues. You need a city big enough. If you like, large concert venues and music or stand-up comedy, or you like going to large sporting events, you need a city big enough to support that. And again, Tampa, I think, is just the right size. Amazing sports city, amazing. It gets every kind of entertainment thing comes to town, but it's not hard to get to these events. I've been to every kind of event in Tampa. I've had season tickets to the Rays games. I've been to me and my wife like stand-up comedy, been to random concerts here and there. and even playoffs and stuff, and it does not feel crazy. People like in Boston and New York, like going to the Red Sox games or something, they come to town, they're like, the amount of crap you have to deal with there versus here, it's, again, breath of fresh air. But you have Amalie Arena where the Lightning play, great hockey team, not only that, but you get every kind of event that comes there. The Tampa Bay Bucks, you have the Rays are based in downtown St. Petersburg. You have a lot of spring training baseball. Well, you have the Rowdies. What else? You got, yeah, you get the point here. And Tampa, I would say, just in summation, is really nice, happy medium blend if you need size, but need it in a not overwhelming way. So on the Sarasota side, it's relatively simple. One, it's going to feel a lot more like one thing. You know, the downtown and the beaches and the rest of all the living districts aren't going to feel like they're all scattered. And Tampa is very, very different. A lot of the benefits to that is like you go in South Tampa, it feels like a completely different world to being 6 miles above it. Sarasota is not going to feel that different from each other. And there's not that much going on. You know, downtown Sarasota is 3.5 miles one way to the beach. Siesta Key is 6 miles south of it. It's all right there. It's also, because of that, it's going to feel a lot more coastal. Overall, it doesn't feel like every area is on the beach. They are barrier islands. But in Tampa, most parts feel different than the beaches. Most parts feel like you're going over to the beach. Even the downtown is on the separate coast than the beach is. Well, Sarasota just feels like once you go west, everything's there. And it's also going to feel, like I mentioned, you know, just not to beat a dead horse, but it's just a lot more docile. It's going to feel like even traffic, there's 1 or 2 major areas to go, and there's 1 or 2 major roads to get there. So you do have some bottlenecks, but not in the same way. You have a lot less people. You have a lot less people that are driving to the same place at the same time. So if that's attractive to you, then that would be really your big divide. If you're purely work doesn't matter and you're purely going for lifestyle, then a lot of people that choose Sarasota that like a lot of what Tampa has, they're fine with like that hour commute. Like we have a lot of people that have relocated with us that they love like going to live music and they love going to the cool stuff Tampa has going on, but they'd rather live in Sarasota and commute to it. So that's why I say once you kind of learn them in order and you learn this juxtaposition, it kind of solves a lot of the Southwest Florida conversation. And it's just, you just got to kind of choose how you prioritize. Because the real benefit to this whole conversation is it's just your homestead, right? So you reside in one, but you know, if you say you pick Tampa and you pick, let's just say the city center of Tampa, like near the airport, you know, you're 60 minutes on average to all the Sarasota stuff for the most part, right? So you could day trip that. Orlando's less than 2 hours. You got all that going on, especially if you're a Disney fan. You know, if you're in Sarasota, downtown Naples is pretty far south, actually. It's about 2 hours south. So say you're in Tampa, you're probably like 2 hours and 45 minutes to downtown Naples, which is like a whole different bird. And you got Marco Island and Sanibel and Captiva. Miami is like 4 hours from Tampa, 3.5. But then you have West Palm, and because of where Tampa's based, you could shoot to St. Augustine, and yeah, you kind of get the point, right? So it's still not like you don't have access to the rest. Everything cool about Florida exists over in this district. I happen to think that Southwest Florida is the best homestead primarily. It's just so central. And then even hurricane-wise, knock on wood, it's done pretty well. So if you had to pick anywhere in Florida to reside to visit the rest, then Southwest Florida is the one. And then Tampa versus Sarasota is probably the biggest conversation on, once you got Southwest Florida, put that hat on, what individually makes sense for me. So that's how I would compare the two. Hope that was helpful, and stick around for a minute. I'll tell you some cool things we got going on. Okay, that's a wrap for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you are really trying to navigate this conversation, it's a great example of, if you're honed in on Tampa and you're like, where do I live? How do I pick amongst them? I'm relocating, I'm selling a house, and I just need to learn more, and I need to make it a simpler conversation. I need to take a lot of information and make it smaller. And whether you care about the economics or the quality of life more, and especially if you're trying to contrast like big metros like Sarasota versus Tampa, not a lot of people have the bandwidth to attack that kind of thing. We live in this world because we have our headquarters in Sarasota and then Tampa and Naples. So we kind of are not only focusing on specifics on these channels, but we're also contrasting them on a macro standpoint. So even if you're just a voyeur outside looking in and you're just curious what's going on in the area and you're not planning on relocating, it'd be a good place to subscribe for that. I will put other videos up here if you like this one that might be similar if you haven't seen them yet. Beyond that, if you go to the sunshinestateco.com, my main website, we have individual city and metro tabs, but we have a free guide tab that we have a relocation guide to Tampa Bay we just recently did. It's a flip book. The link is in this description box for this video below. They kind of hide it now, but it's the first thing right under the title. And it's a nice little like one-piecer where it has a neighborhoods list, new construction list, places to eat, gyms, spas, things to do with kids, things to do in general. So that's a great thing to do next if you haven't already done so. Newsletter on the website too, if you want to check that out. Most importantly, thank you guys so much for visiting the Tampa Bay Relocation Guide. My name is Adam Hancock. I was your host today, and we'll see you on the next one.